In the quiet town of Riverview, there stood an old hardware store with a dark secret. This store, once bustling with locals fixing up their homes, had become a place whispered about in hushed tones. Stories of possessed tools that seemed to have a life of their own circulated among the townsfolk. The most chilling tale was about a hammer that would find its way into odd places, seemingly on its own. Workers often found it on top of high shelves, far from where it had last been placed. Some even claimed to hear it pounding away at night, long after the store had closed. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows lengthened, the store's owner, Tom, was locking up for the night. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He glanced back at the rows of tools, each one casting long, eerie shadows. Just as he was about to turn away, he noticed the hammer lying in the middle of the aisle. Tom's heart raced. He was certain he had left it on the workbench. Curiosity mixed with a prickling sense of dread, Tom picked up the hammer, its weight feeling oddly heavier than usual. He quickly locked up and went home, hoping a good night's sleep would erase the unsettling experience. That night, Tom's sleep was anything but restful. He dreamt of the hardware store, dark and silent, save for the rhythmic pounding of a hammer. The sound grew louder, echoing in his mind until he awoke, drenched in sweat. Shaking off the dream, Tom resolved to investigate the next day. As morning came, he arrived at the store early, determined to find a logical explanation. He inspected the hammer closely. It was an old tool, passed down from the store's previous owner. Upon careful examination, Tom noticed strange markings carved into the handle. They looked like symbols, almost runic, and seemed to pulse with an eerie glow. That evening, Tom decided to stay late, watching the store from the back office. Hours passed without incident, and he began to dismiss his fears as mere imagination. Just as he was about to call it a night, the temperature dropped suddenly. His breath became visible in the cold air. The lights flickered and then went out, plunging the store into darkness. Tom reached for his flashlight, the beam cutting through the thick gloom. From the main aisle, he heard a distinct sound, the hammer hitting against the concrete floor. Heart pounding, he followed the sound, flashlight shaking in his hands. The hammer lay at the foot of an old display cabinet, but as he approached, it began to move, dragging itself across the floor. Tom froze in terror, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. Desperately seeking answers, Tom delved into the store's history. He discovered that the hardware store was built on land that once housed a blacksmith's forge. The blacksmith, named Henry, was rumored to have been a practitioner of dark arts, using his tools and rituals to bind spirits. One night, a ritual went wrong, resulting in a fire that consumed the forge and Henry with it. The land was left fallow for years until the hardware store was built atop it, the tools carrying the curses of their creator. Tom realized the hammer was not just a tool, but a vessel for Henry's tormented soul. Determined to put an end to the hauntings, he sought help from the town's historian, Clara, who was well versed in local legends. Clara provided Tom with a ritual to release Henry's spirit. They gathered at the store one night, armed with ancient texts and protective symbols. As they began the ritual, the store seemed to come alive with dark energy. Tools rattled on their shelves, and the temperature plummeted. With Clara's guidance, Tom recited the incantations, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. The hammer began to levitate, spinning in the air before crashing to the ground and shattering into pieces. A wisp of dark smoke rose from the fragments, dissipating into the air. The store fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by an almost palpable sense of peace. The hauntings ceased, and the tools returned to their inanimate state. Tom felt a profound sense of relief, knowing he had freed the tormented soul of Henry. The hardware store returned to its normal, quiet self, becoming a place of community once more. Yet, the story of the haunted hardware store and the possessed hammer remained, passed down through generations as a warning of the dark secrets that sometimes lie hidden beneath the surface of our everyday lives. And sometimes late at night, if you listen closely, you might just hear the faint echo of a hammer striking within the old walls.